All good? Alrighty. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Real Graps. I'm your host, Joe Gierer. I believe this is our 7th episode now. And again, we're on that road to WrestleMania and road to Stand and Deliver. So things are starting to ramp up finally, because this has been a very lackluster, I'd say, build to WrestleMania this far. The feuds that are coming together really slowly, and they're coming together really late. We're just now in this past, week or so, finally getting non-world title matches booked for WrestleMania. So it has been a very slow and prolonged build from Triple H and the WWE towards WrestleMania. We're only 2.5 weeks out now, which I realized yesterday, and that felt crazy to say because it feels to me like, April 20th, April 19th are so far away, especially being in college. Like, it was March yesterday and now it's April. And all of a sudden, everything's starting to ramp up real fast. But we are deep into the road into WrestleMania, and still there's not been that many official matches made. So they really got to start ramping it up with that. And the same for Stand and Deliver, because you really have zero Stand and Deliver matches for NXT right now. So we really got to get up and get going on the road to Stand and Deliver in WrestleMania weekend. Now, mini rant aside, let's jump into what happened this past week in WWE. First, starting off with NXT last Tuesday. Last Tuesday, Stephanie Vaquer had to pull double duty. She had to defend both her North American Championship in the main event, and she had to open the show with an NXT Women's Championship defense, that being against Jada Parker, to which she defended the title successfully. Jada Parker got her she got her second crack at the NXT Women's Championship since, we'll say, last August. So that's 2 times in the past, maybe about, I'd say, if I'm doing my math correctly, that's about 2 times in the last 8 months or so. And she failed, which we kind of figured she would. Stephanie Vaquer just won that championship. She wasn't dropping it right away. So Stephanie Vaquer defeated Jada Parker, but it was via a roll-up. So it kept Jada Parker a bit protected, made Stephanie Vaquer look like a technician. She looked very smart and very good in ring. It was an okay match. It wasn't anything too special, but nonetheless, Jada Parker ended up getting rolled up, and it was in part because of Jordynne Grace and a distraction she had. Obviously, there's ongoing beef between Jada Parker and Jordynne Grace that needs to be resolved at one point or another. But it was Jada Parker that was distracted by. Hold on, let me turn down my mic volume. Seems a little high. It was Jada Parker that was distracted by Jordynne Grace's just mere appearance at the side of the ring, and Stephanie Vaquer was able to take advantage and roll up Jada Parker to retain the NXT Women's Championship in her first official defense of it. But that wasn't it. She ended up getting ambushed by Fatal Influence following that match in a lead up to the main event match between Fallon Henley and Stephanie Vaquer, that rematch for the North American Championship, which, like I said last week, I was kind of pleased with it main eventing over the NXT Women's Championship, because you want both belts to hold that prestige of I'm very important, 2 belts. And it makes Stephanie Vaquer all that much more important if both her belts mean something. And for her to open the show with an NXT Women's Championship defense, the belt that was elevated heavily by Roxanne Perez this past year and made to be the #1 championship, arguably on that whole brand, over the men's NXT Championship, it not getting the main event spot and the North American title getting it, I think does a lot to solidify that title's importance and that title's prestige. So good on Shawn Michaels for that booking, and I was happy with the way everything went down with those 2 title matches. Now, there was still tension in the backstage locker room area between Trick and Javon. It remained, and Javon Evans believed that the title ended up changing Trick Williams' character. And if you've been watching the product over the past year or so since Trick Williams won the NXT Championship, that's true, because Trick Williams was a real fun-loving. He was a very happy character. He was a very likable character, most importantly. And although he still gets these big crowd pops, his character is not as likable anymore. He's come off as very brash, very arrogant, very rude, especially towards Javon Evans in the backstage locker room area, because he's been telling Javon Evans that essentially, I'm better than you. I was champion. And look at you. You're never going to be champion. And that's been this ongoing narrative for the past few weeks. And it makes you think Trick Williams is almost a heel character already, the way he's been acting towards Javon Evans and others in that locker room, showing his arrogance, believing that he's just better. And maybe he is in K-pop. Maybe he is better than Javon Evans and everyone else because he is a two-time NXT champion and he had 2 good reigns. But he definitely has changed because if you go back to when Trick had the belt, if you go back to when Trick didn't have the belt before he got the belt, he would have never acted like this to somebody he considered a friend. And if you go back a few months, they did consider themselves friends. So Trick Williams all of a sudden going back on that, saying we not friends just because, we got dreads, we supposed to be friends. Just because we both from the Carolinas, we supposed to be friends. Trick Williams is just coming off as real brash, real arrogant, real rude, and not like his old self. So in the assessment that the title changed Trick Williams, I don't think it was necessarily the title. I think it was that urge and that want to get back at the title that's really eating at him inside, making him feel like I should have that belt. It's mine. And I feel like that loss of the title, not so much getting the title, but losing the title is really what ultimately changed the character of Trick Williams. Sean Spears interrupted a Ricky Saints interview backstage with Vic Joseph and told him that he better not make him an enemy. And he also took another shot at AEW, which it feels like they've been doing a lot. Even John Cena did it on Raw last night. Not to go on a tangent, but they took a shot at AEW. Sean Spears told him that he burned every bridge he ever made there. And if it doesn't work out at WWE, or when it doesn't work out at WWE, he can simply just get up and go back. Oh, wait, no, you burned all your bridges, didn't you? So it was a good segment between them backstage, good interview segment. And it really inserted Ricky Saints, not directly, but somewhat into the title picture at that point, because Ricky Saints still had an upcoming match against Ridge Holland that he had to take care of business in before he could make any claim at a championship match. But Spears and Ricky Saints seems to be, well, it is, I can officially say it because it already happened and it's happening tonight. It is the first title feud in WWE for Ricky Saints because he's getting his crack at gold later tonight. We'll talk about that in a moment. Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe picked up a win over Hank and Tank, the second consecutive week or second consecutive match, I'm not sure exactly which one, that Hank and Tank seeked advice from a legendary tag team. First, it was the Hardy Boys, and this last week, it was the Motor City Machine Guns making an appearance on NXT. And they gave Hank and Tank some advice on how to go about their match, how to go about finally getting some victories and picking up momentum. And they went out there, they tried to take that advice, and they lost again. So more, doubt creeping into the minds of Hank and Tank as we move forward, and what the landscape of the NXT tag division could be. Where will this lead win for, DuPont and Igwe? Who knows? But Hank and Tank, I feel like losing these past few weeks to Briggs and Inamura first, and now DuPont and Igwe, I feel like it's really supposed to be a character building story for Hank and Tank. I don't know if anything really, great is going to come out of it for the other two teams, but I feel like they're trying to focus more on Hank and Tank building that character and maybe building to a tag team, NXT tag team championship reign at some point in the future. Will they will they take the titles off of Fraxium? I'm not sure, but it seems like they're doing a character building story for Hank and Tank, who again couldn't get the job done despite getting legendary advice. As a result of that fatal influence attack earlier in the night, Stephanie Vaquer had to fight through injury in the main event. She determined that she would still compete, even though Avo did not want her to. She wanted to reschedule the match. But of course, Stephanie Vaquer, being this tough character that she is, she didn't want to do that. She said that she will still fight, even though her ribs, I believe it was, were hurting her and were maybe cracked. But nonetheless, she got them taped up. She was good and ready to go. Had about an hour and a half to recover between the attack and the main event match. So Stephanie Vaquer determined that she still would be competing for her second championship later that night. Lexis King and Javon Evans ran their NXT Heritage Cup Championship match, to which it was Lexis King ultimately that retained that championship. And it was via a count out because Obafemi came out and got involved and hit Javon Evans with a very nasty looking apron power bomb. Not a safe move to pull off. And made it look very brutal. Both men. Oba looked like he slammed him hard. Javon looked like he took a real hard bump. And they made that look like $1,000,000, if I'm being honest. But that Obafemi and Javon Evans feud and tension is obviously going to continue because why would he come out and interrupt this championship match? Otherwise, Javon Evans took an opportunity when Oba had his back turned to lay him out last week in the ring after the underground match with Trick Williams. And I think we could be seeing another multi-man match at Stand and Deliver between Trick Williams, Obafemi, and Javon Evans. This past New Year's Evil, it was Eddie Thorpe, Trick Williams, and Obafemi. But I believe Eddie Thorpe is going to get replaced with Javon Evans going into Stand and Deliver season because Obafemi versus Trick Williams versus Javon Evans is a money match that they can make for Las Vegas. If you want to draw fans in, you take those three names, you put them in not a North American title, you put them in an NXT championship match and have them go at it because that could be a great, fun match. You have no idea who's going to win. Could Obafemi lose and get called up real early? Maybe. Could Trick Williams regain the throne, turn heel, whatnot? Maybe. Could Javon Evans finally break through and win his first NXT championship less than a year on the roster or a little over a year on the roster? Whatever it was. Maybe. That's a good match. And you can also have the Dark State play a factor because, as we talked about previously on this show, Trick Williams and Javon Evans are the two candidates that everybody thinks are going to be the leader. One of them is going to be the leader of Dark State. Those four that have been causing chaos left and right are not the only four people in that faction that exist. There's got to be a leader that's instructing them. And by popular opinion, they haven't attacked when Trick Williams was in the ring yet. Trick Williams has been acting, as I said before, real heelish recently. So for him to get help from Dark State in order to regain that NXT championship and have a heel run with it, I feel like is something 100% plausible that Shawn Michaels can pull the trigger on. So Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Obafemi, Stand and Deliver. That's my prediction for that match. And I feel like it's going to be made official in the next 2 weeks, if not tonight. Dark State actually appeared afterwards when Javon Evans lost and he and Obafemi were in the ring. And Trick Williams showed up out of nowhere again, conveniently when Dark State appears. But he misfired and hit Javon Evans with the trick shot rather than Obafemi, who he was going for. And he didn't really show remorse. I know he had an interview segment later in the show where he addressed it, but at the time he struck Javon Evans and he kind of just used it as like, I'm sending a message. He didn't really look like he was remorseful for hitting him. So again, Trick Williams just losing that, emotion almost. And he's just consumed by anger and he's just consumed by this obsession with the NXT championship and getting it back that he doesn't really care who he, screws over or hits in the process of trying to get it back. He's just solely focused, or at least it seems, on Obafemi and regaining what he believes is his rightful throne as the NXT champion. Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley picked up some momentum going into their Thursday night TNA. Either it was a match or it was a title match. Like I said, I'm not the biggest TNA watcher. I don't watch weekly, but I do hear about some stuff that's going on, and it was part of the story with that match last Tuesday. Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley had a big match coming up on TNA, and they got matched up on NXT with the Meta Girls, Chikara and Lash, to build some momentum, and that they did. They picked up the win, and Solo and Zarya were standing there watching on, taunting Lash and Chikara. This little ongoing backstage feud that's been going on for the past couple of weeks, I'm sure will culminate in some sort of tag match on NXT or at Stand and Deliver. Like we said before, they haven't really set up too many matches for WrestleMania weekend so far. So pretty much anything is on the table right now, especially with NXT, who has 0 official matches for that card. So Sol, Ruka, Zarya versus the Meta Girls in a tag match could be a match you see on that card. The Dawn, Tony D'Angelo, called in the family for a meeting, and he told them that he wants any intel he can get on the Stark State faction because they attacked him last week during the family's match. They ambushed him from behind. They laid him out, And obviously, being the Don, being the mob boss, as his gimmick is, that's not going to slide. So he sent the family to go spy on them and to go get any possible intel they can against them so that he can handle his business. And he also reassured Stacks that he's got faith in him and that he believes in him and he knows he wouldn't let him down. And I don't really know if it's like, again, you never really know with WWE, but the way that this has been portrayed these last few weeks with Stacks and the family, it feels like they're growing apart. Tony D'Angelo and Stacks Lorenzo. It feels like there's some tension there. And maybe it's just that Stacks is losing confidence and he feels like he's spiraling off into something that he doesn't want to be. He wants to be the reliable guy for Tony D'Angelo, and he feels like he has not been that recently. So maybe it was just some reassurance. Maybe it was just Tony D'Angelo saying, "Nah, man, I got your back. I know that you can do it, and I trust you, and I believe in you, and I know you got me." But also the way that he said it made it seem like he was speaking down to him and that maybe there was some underlying intent there or some underlying thought that maybe Stacks is trying to cross me. Maybe Stacks is trying to get the upper hand on me so that he could take over the family. I don't really know, but we'll just have to wait and see how that one plays out. And I know I say that a lot on this show, but for this story in particular with the family and this little dynamic between Channing Stacks, Lorenzo, and Tony D'Angelo, we're going to have to just sit back and see how it plays out because I'm not really too sure what direction that's going in right now. As I previously mentioned, Motor City Machine Guns were there, and they gave more advice to Hank and Tank backstage in order to try and pump them up and get them to get some tag team success. So, like I said before, this story is primarily focusing on Hank and Tank getting legendary tag advice and trying to build their way up the ranks to finally call themselves NXT Tag Champions. Ethan Page had a match with Andre Chase that was set up backstage earlier in the night, and he won. Ethan Page defeated Andre Chase in that match. And you kind of saw Andre Chase get a little bit of confidence back. He wouldn't do his stomps ever since Chase U got disbanded a few months back. But last, week, he finally did them and he was saying, "Give me a C, give me an H, give me an A, give me an S." He was finally getting that confidence back. So potentially you could see a rebirth of, Chase U in some other form with these new kids like Cale Dixon and Uriah Connors. I believe those are their names. Specifically Uriah Connors. I believe that's his name because I haven't seen him wrestle on the show yet. But with these, characters, maybe Andre Chase is getting his confidence back and you can see a rebirth of Chase U, reintroduction of some characters in it like Thea Hale. I don't know where Thea Hale's been, but we got to get Thea Hale back on TV because she's a good young wrestler and she did good work. She was in an NXT championship feud not that long ago. So get Thea Hale back on TV. But enough of the tangents. Andre Chase lost the match. And Ricky Saints ended up getting blindsided. He was on commentary for that match. And he got blindsided by Sean Spears while he was distracted by Ethan Page. So a little AEW, again, callback, threesome of people, triangle, if you will. And he got blown up, knocked out, laid out, whatever you want to call it. Ricky Saints got taken advantage of, and Sean Spears stood tall over him. Trick, as I mentioned before, had a backstage interview or an outside interview after the fact where he said he meant to hit Oba and he's tired of people taking this stuff out of the narrative. But he did say that he felt Javon Evans and Eddie Thorpe have only been distractions over these past few weeks and told Obafemi to catch him in the ring next week. And then they asked him about Dark State, and he gave a very simple answer. He said, "That ain't my business. Dark State isn't my business." Which, if you know WWE, Dark State is Trick Williams' business. He is going to be a heel. He is going to be the leader. And maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps that's too obvious. But in my heart, I believe that he is the leader. And I believe that'll be revealed probably at Stand and Deliver if Trick Williams is in an NXT title match, which he most likely will be. There's about a 95% chance that Trick and Oba at least one-on-one run it for the NXT championship at Stand and Deliver. We closed with the main event for the NXT North American Championship, Women's North American Championship, between Stephanie Vaquer and Fallon Henley, a rematch they ran with the roles reversed this time. And it was Stephanie Vaquer that came out on top. She defied the odds. She again outsmarted and outlasted all of Fatal Influence 1-on-3 to retain the NXT Women's North American Championship. Stephanie Vaquer made history on that night. she became the first person to defend both titles successfully on the same night. Others have tried, many have failed, but Stephanie Vaquer became the first WWE superstar, main roster or NXT, to defend two separate championships successfully on one night. She became the first to do it. She made history, like she said she set out to do. And then, you know, that's just who she is. Stephanie Vaquer said that she came to WWE to make history. She became the first women's double champion, and she now became the first WWE superstar in total to defend both her championships successfully on the same night. Many have tried, all have failed, except Stephanie Vaquer. She became the first to do it, living up to her name, La Primera, the first history maker, Stephanie Vaquer. And that wrapped it up for NXT with Jordan Grace coming out at the end, saving Stephanie Vaquer from an attack by Fatal Influence. And they had a stare down after. That closed the show. The whole women's locker room was in, shambles. They were in chaos to close the show, wanting next on Stephanie Vaquer. And that was it for NXT. And now it's time to move into the main roster shows for the week. Starting with SmackDown. On Friday, we opened up with a Cody Rhodes promo, which he was then interrupted by his good pal, Randy Orton, who came out to sing his praises. He was giving him all the credit. He said he was very proud of him, which was really nice to hear. It was a nice bonding moment. It was a nice moment between two friends who have been in the business together for a very long time. However, Randy Orton did let him know that there will be a time where he wants to go for his 15th World Championship. And should that be Cody Rhodes, which he seemed to believe that it was going to be Cody Rhodes. He believed that Cody Rhodes was about to kick John Cena's ass at WrestleMania. Randy Orton let him know, I'm coming for number 15, whether it's you or whether it's not you. And then Drew McIntyre came out. The almighty Drew McIntyre, who interrupts every single segment between two-faced characters on the planet. Drew McIntyre came out, and he told Randy Orton that back is hanging on by a thread. You ain't getting near a world title. If anybody's taking that title off Cody Rhodes, it's Drew McIntyre. And he also took a victory lap about everything that's going on with John Cena, as he has multiple times in these past few weeks. He also shot on Randy Orton before he got run out of the ring by the two men, and they set up Randy versus Drew for later in the night, which is a banger match. It's been a pay-per-view match in the past, a PLE match, whatever you want to call them. It's been that type of match. So to get it for free on SmackDown was chef's kiss. That London crowd was getting treated very nicely that night. And one side note, London has phenomenal crowds. However, London crowds need to know when it's a good time to not sing. They have to know when it's a good time to be quiet, because some of these segments start getting underway and then they all of a sudden erupt in chant and it interrupts something that was going well. So London, should anybody be watching this WIUR show, which I'm very sure you're not, learn when to be quiet. You can be loud. That's all great, but learn when to be quiet during a promo segment. Anyways, the Street Profits defended their titles against Pretty Deadly, the hometown heroes, and retained them. They won back their WWE Tag Team Championships only a couple of weeks ago. They've had two matches since. One was an official title defense, this time against Pretty Deadly, and they successfully retained the championships. The official faction name, the Secret Hervis, being Piper Niven and Alba Fire in tag action, fought Caden Carter and Katana Chance, who made a return to action after several months off. And they picked up a win. And then Zelina Vega came out trying to help them after a brutal after-match attack, to which she was also taken out. So I guess they're still going to go this route that Zelina Vega is the upcoming challenger for Chelsea Green's United States Championship. Is that a WrestleMania match? I don't know. I feel like every title should be defended on WrestleMania. So should that be the match they want to go with? It should be on the WrestleMania card, because a title being left off WrestleMania or a champion being left off WrestleMania doesn't sit right with me. Like last year, they had a big match between Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, Naomi against Damage Control, who was holding the Women's Tag Team Championships at the time. And necessarily those tag titles weren't left off the show, but they weren't defended. And I feel like every title at the biggest show of the year for wrestling, both brands, SmackDown, Raw, and NXT at Stand and Deliver, every single title should be defended. So I feel Chelsea Green should have a U.S. title defense at WrestleMania. Should it be Zelina Vega? I'm not sure. Some people might argue that feud hasn't been built up well enough for a WrestleMania match, and I agree. But it's a championship in WWE at the biggest show of the year. It should be defended. Now, Braun Strowman and LA Knight had a match for the United States Championship, to which it ended in a no contest due to big Jacob Fatu's interference. He came in, he laid out Braun Strowman again, which he's done multiple times over the past few months. He also laid out LA Knight. But in the aftermath of the match, being a no contest, LA Knight retains the United States Championship. And like I said, Jacob Fatu laid out both men and stood tall. So will you see Jacob Fatu in a U.S. title feud, possibly at WrestleMania in a few weeks? I think so. And I feel like they're going to make it official at some point in this near future. And Jimmy Uso came up next. More bloodline stuff. Jimmy Uso had a match against the Miz set up backstage because Miz was running his mouth per usual. But Jimmy Uso made it clear he would slap Gunther like he did last Monday. He slapped the taste out his mouth. He said he would do it over again and again and again and again if he had the chance to. But like I said, the Miz and Jimmy Uso got into an altercation, not physical. They got into a verbal altercation. So that match got set up for later in the night. Sticking with this bloodline topic, as I just mentioned, Jacob Fatu laid everybody out in the ring after the United States Championship match was over, although he was the cause for the end of it. But you know what I mean. After that match was over, he left the ring. He left Braun Strowman down. He left LA Knight down. And backstage, he said, I will be the last man standing with Braun Strowman, obviously hinting at a last man standing match, which they later in the show made official for this week. Braun Strowman and Jacob Fatu, I assume their feud that they've been having ongoing will come to an end with a last man standing match, just like Braun Strowman and Bronson Reed's feud months back came to an end with a last man standing match. Jacob Fatu said he will be the last man standing in regards to Braun Strowman. That match got set for this week in, I believe it's Chicago. And he also declared that he is going to win the United States Championship with or without Tama and Solo, because they got into more of a heated segment backstage after Jacob Fatu got back. Solo seemed a little annoyed that Jacob didn't run this stuff by him. Jacob said, you didn't run it by me last week before you came out and got involved in my business. So again, like I said, it seemed like they were building up some tension between Solo upon his return and Jacob. Then it seemed like it faded away, and now it's back. Is 2 weeks enough time for that to be the WrestleMania match? Maybe. I don't think so. But Jacob Fatu seems pretty adamant about capturing that United States Championship and bringing it to the family, as he put it, although they're not acting much like a family recently. Naomi had a video package aired. Again, it just seems like we're sticking with this bloodline segment because Naomi's married to Jimmy Uso, so she is part of this family. But Naomi just recently turned heel, as we've talked about already on this show, and she had a video segment aired, video package, video promo, whatever the right word is, whatever you want to call it, and it was phenomenal. It was a 10 out of 10. She did great acting. Her reasoning behind her attack on Jade, her plea with Bianca, it was all 10 out of 10. It was great television, great wrestling television. She said that she was done being underappreciated and overlooked, and then she advised Jade at the end of her segment to proceed with caution should she be trying to get near her at all. That's a WrestleMania match, Jade and Naomi. 100%. It's only a matter of about a week or two until they make that match official. One-on-one Naomi versus Jade at WrestleMania. Blood feud, great feud. They've done a great job with it so far. And Naomi as a heel has been 10 out of 10 so far. She's been putting on phenomenal performances week after week. She's been doing great work as a heel character. And judging by her past, everybody already knew she was capable of this, that she was good as a heel. But now it's just solidifying it. She's a great heel. And she's exactly what that SmackDown women's roster needed in terms of heels. Naomi, sticking with her, she also came out and Michin was to have a match against Charlotte Flair immediately after that segment aired, to which Jade had a little backstage interaction with Michin and B-Fab. And in turn, Naomi came out. She snuck up, she ambushed Michin and B-Fab and laid them both out before Michin's match against Charlotte Flair. Jade came out to get her hands on Naomi, but Naomi ran away, and Jade ended up helping B-Fab get away, as well as facing off with Charlotte Flair, a feud between the two that they teased back when Jade signed with WWE in the first place. So that feud will probably be revisited at some point down the line, maybe for a world title, although I'm still hoping that Tiffany Stratton retains her world championship against Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. I don't feel like there's any reason to take that belt off Tiffany Stratton at this point. There's more reason to build up her character and make her look like a force by beating somebody who's the most successful women's superstar of all time. There's no reason for Charlotte to win that championship unless she's that stuck up that she wants to be the one to break Ric Flair's record, as she said already. Shouldn't be John Cena, it should be her. She should be the first woman to do it, yada, yada, yada. Charlotte Flair should not win at WrestleMania. However, she did win on Friday Night SmackDown. Charlotte picked up the win over Michin, and they ran a interview segment with Tiffany Stratton immediately after the match, where she said she believes that it's Charlotte Flair that actually has everything to lose and not her, which is an interesting dynamic considering Tiffany Stratton is the women's world champion. She just cashed in her Money in the Bank back in January to claim that title about 2 months ago now. About 2 months ago now, about 3 months ago now. It's been a little under 3 months since she cashed in that Money in the Bank contract. But it's an interesting dynamic to go into a match like this, feeling that you, the champion, have nothing to lose. And the reasoning was because Charlotte's been calling her a rookie. She's inexperienced. She's delusional. She's stuck up, whatever she may be. She's a copycat. So Tiffany Stratton believes that she actually in this sequence has nothing to lose. And it's Charlotte that has everything to lose because Charlotte's been running her mouth and she's this high and mighty veteran, most successful women's superstar of all time. So I like the way they did that. I like the dynamic between the two. And I feel like obviously they're going to have themselves a very good match at WrestleMania. Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton ran that match that got set up earlier in the night. And Drew McIntyre picked up the win off of a Kevin Owens distraction to build towards that Randy Orton and WrestleMania Kevin Owens. That Randy Orton and Kevin Owens WrestleMania match. And Kevin Owens ended up getting into an altercation with Randy Orton following the match. He was about to get Punk kicked again until he hopped the barricade and escaped through the crowd. Randy Orton is most definitely 100% hitting Kevin Owens with a punt at WrestleMania. And I believe he's going to go for a package pile driver, Kevin Owens, that is. He's going to miss. Randy Orton is the one that's going to land a big shot. He's going to punt Kevin Owens' head into next week, as he said multiple times. They've been teasing it too much. Randy Orton hasn't used that punt in a few years. And I believe that this year, this WrestleMania, this feud is the perfect time to finally bust it out the bag, kick someone's head clean off their shoulders, show off that punting prowess to several NFL organizations, Randy Orton. Naomi and B-Fab got set up for next week. And another big thing that's happening with WWE in this next week, Rey Fenix, the brother of Penta, his tag partner, his Lucha brother, he's been getting his own vignettes, his own teases over on SmackDown these past few weeks. And they finally made it official that Rey Fenix arrives this week in Chicago on Friday Night SmackDown. Will he arrive for a match? Who will he be facing? Will he arrive for a segment? Will he be signing a contract? Will somebody interrupt his contract signing? Who knows? But Rey Fenix, the other half of the Lucha Brothers, Penta's brother, you've seen how good Penta is. Rey Fenix is equally as good as Penta. He is here in WWE, both Lucha Bros, and I feel it's just a matter of time before they reunite at some point on a show, maybe go for some tag gold, whatever it may be. Rey Fenix is here. And as I mentioned before, Jacob Fatu and Braun Strowman are set for a last man standing match this Friday in Chicago. Jimmy Uso ran in the main event match with The Miz. He got the win. He hopped on commentary after and he said that he was coming for Gunther on Monday. He sent the message and it was good build towards that little mini feud match, I guess, between he and Gunther that built up last week off the big smack and everything that happened with Jey Uso. Our main event segment on SmackDown was a lot to unpack, but we're going to keep it nice and compact here on Real Graps. Roman Reigns came out first. He cut a promo. He was all jolly. He was happy. They were singing his name. Paul Heyman had that funny um, part of it where he got caught off guard. Roman put the mic up to his mouth and he was singing with the crowd. It was all in good fun. Roman Reigns was in a great mood. He came out and he signed the contract first, which, if you go back to when Roman Reigns had the championship, he never did that. So it's a subtle little change in his character that, being a babyface, he's kind of had the same persona that he did when he was a heel, just not to the same extent. However, that's another subtle little change. He came out and he signed the contract first, when in the past he waited for his opponent to sign it first because he didn't want to sign it. So, little change in Roman Reigns' character, but he was having fun. He came out, he signed the contract, and he was about to get on his merry way for his favorite person in the WWE. Seth freaking Rollins came out and interrupted him. They bickered for a bit about who's had more success. Seth Rollins said that they've achieved their vision. Roman Reigns said, "It wasn't you, it was all me. I got us the billion-dollar deals. What have you done for this company?" And Seth Rollins said that he's had to keep Roman in check because of that ego and that me mindset. And then, of course, Seth Rollins had to rope CM Punk into it somehow and say that you could have killed CM Punk at War Games, but instead you shook his hand. For that, I have to clean up your mess again. He signed the contract second. Then it was CM Punk that came out, of course, because he had to also sign the contract for the triple threat they made official last week. CM Punk came out. He cut a little promo, hopped on the contract desk, the table. Roman Reigns was bickering at him a little bit, but it was Paul Heyman that came over and he let CM Punk know, this is a main event match. You're finally getting to live out your dream. You're closing the show at WrestleMania, which, is that true? Not really, because he's going to be the night one main event, which is something he's called, in AEW in the past. That's something that he kind of poked fun at, main eventing not the final night of WrestleMania, which is exactly what he's doing. But nonetheless, it is a main event. It is a WrestleMania main event in WWE, regardless of what day you do. And CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins will be main eventing night one of WrestleMania. And John Cena versus Cody Rhodes will be main eventing night two. But CM Punk finally gets his wish. He's going to be main eventing WrestleMania, which has been his entire story this whole time. He's never gotten a WrestleMania main event until this year, 2025, to which Seth Rollins was irate about. He was pissed. He was so upset that CM Punk got to live out this dream because he believed he didn't deserve it. CM Punk dropped a bomb right before the show got off air, because he said, after he signed that contract last, that this is not the favor that he's owed by Paul Heyman. If you go back to War Games, CM Punk is owed a favor by Paul Heyman in regards to, we don't really know what. We don't really know what that favor is because they haven't talked about it on the show. They've only mentioned it in little tidbits. And Roman Reigns seemed to think that that was the favor that Paul Heyman owed him, get him in the main event of WrestleMania, and it wasn't. So what is that favor going to be? Possibly Paul Heyman leaving Roman Reigns and coming to side with CM Punk again? I don't know, but I'm sure we'll find out at WrestleMania in 2.5 weeks. That wraps up for SmackDown. Now, to get into Monday Night Raw in London last night. London got 2 back-to-back shows. Can you believe it? What other city is so lucky in regards to getting WWE shows? Monday Night Raw yesterday. Monday afternoon Raw here in the United States. Cody Rhodes and John Cena opened the show, and we finally got that first actual promo battle between the two men, because these past few weeks, it's been John Cena comes out, he cuts a big promo. Cody Rhodes comes out, he cuts a promo, John Cena walks away. The following week, John Cena comes out, John Cena cuts a promo. Cody Rhodes comes out, Cody Rhodes cuts a promo, John Cena walks away. Everybody has been itching to finally see Cody Rhodes and John Cena in an actual promo battle, and for John Cena to actually cut a promo on Cody Rhodes, because John Cena hasn't cut an official promo on Cody Rhodes yet. It's been all the fans. He's been justifying his heel turn. He's been justifying why he's no longer in cahoots with the fans of WWE, and he's made great points. But your WrestleMania feud, John, was not with the fan base. It was with Cody Rhodes, who is a representative of the fan base. So you've put it. But We've been itching for a promo battle between Cody Rhodes and John Cena. And last night was the first official promo battle between the two. John Cena was torching him. John Cena was going in. Cody Rhodes came out and he kind of pulled that, 8 Mile card where he's like, all right, I know what this is going to be. I know what you're going to say. I have a lisp. I was booed in my own company. What do you got for me, John? He was kind of pointing out everything John Cena could go after. And it was John Cena that went after none of what Cody Rhodes pointed out. He shot deeper. He shot on things that actually would hurt the ego of a guy like Cody Rhodes. John Cena said he was going to bury Cody Rhodes because everybody has said he's buried talent over the years, to which John Cena put up a great line. He said, I do not bury talent. I am talent, and I bury mediocrity. So he called Cody Rhodes mediocre. And he said that him holding that WWE championship makes him sick because he doesn't believe that Cody Rhodes has any real ability in this heel character. He doesn't believe that Cody Rhodes deserves to be in the position where he is. He believed Cody Rhodes manipulated his way to the top of the business and that he has this huge ego that actually outshines his ability because he doesn't really have that much ability. And he said that he dropped a line about Cody Rhodes being his chauffeur. He dropped a line about Cody Rhodes stealing everything from him and all his secrets to be undeniable, as he put it. And instead, Cody Rhodes is still underwhelming. John Cena is absolutely unmatched on the mic. There is nobody in the history of the business that can go on the mic like John Cena. There's a few that can compare. There's a few that you can maybe say do. But in my opinion, John Cena is the greatest mic worker in the history of professional wrestling. And again, you saw it last night. Some people don't even think he was going fully in like he could have. But John Cena is so good. And to have him as a heel is a little dangerous to anybody who is a babyface on the roster, especially your top babyface like Cody Rhodes, because at any given moment, John Cena can go out there and absolutely torch somebody on the microphone. And he seemed to think that, John Cena has this idea that Cody Rhodes is putting on a facade and he's out there living a double life for the audience. He says that he says that Cody Rhodes puts on this persona for the audience to make them like him, which is something that John Cena accused himself of a few weeks ago. He says that Cody Rhodes goes out there and he puts on this facade and he's afraid to show the real person, that he's covering it up with a fake persona because he's afraid to go out there and show his real personality and show that he is actually, after all, mediocre and not the person that he wants to be. And if you want to take it a step further, John Cena believes that Cody Rhodes is out there living a double life and not showing his real personality to the fan base. Because if you go back and look at what Cody Rhodes did after he left WWE, even when he was in WWE, he was a heel. Cody Rhodes was a nasty, brash heel character, especially on the indies after he left. So to put on this good guy persona, this politician persona in line with what Roman Reigns accused him of, John Cena is punching at that. And he's making a very real and very good complaint against Cody Rhodes that he's not being himself, that he's putting on a facade for the fans, just trying to get them to like him and trying to get himself over in the business. All things that John Cena has accused Cody Rhodes of have been valid to this point in the promo. John Cena does not shoot on things that don't matter. He comes for the jugular, he comes for the killer every single time, especially as a heel. He did it as a face. But doing what he did was phenomenal last night to start this feud and this promo battle. Cody Rhodes, though, held his own, in my opinion. I felt Cody Rhodes did very good, and he made very real complaints against John Cena in this promo. He said that it was the fans that chose him, and John Cena was chosen by a guy who's no longer here that we shall not name, and that person is Vince McMahon. Because of everything going on with Vince McMahon and the legal battles and whatnot, they don't want to mention him on the broadcast anymore. They don't want to bring him up. He's this terrible person. And he says that John Cena was force-fed on the WWE Universe by Vince McMahon, whereas he wasn't. He felt that he was chosen by the fans to be the guy, and John Cena never was. Because even when John Cena was this good heel, and he was this guy that was so nice and so loving to the fan base, and he pushed the right things, they would still boo him. They would still give him negative chants, and he was force-fed on them by the company. People were not fans of John Cena at first. And that's what Cody Rhodes was getting at. John Cena was calling him a Nepo baby who didn't earn anything. And Cody Rhodes just simply came back and said, they chose me. You got pushed on us by the owner. Nobody wanted you. And it's a really real complaint against John Cena. And it was a very good line for Cody. Speaking of good lines, he said John Cena had more quote unquote D, you know what that stands for, in his promo than in his jorts. So it was a nice little jab, funny, got a good crowd reaction. It was a good line by Cody Rhodes. John Cena then came back and said that he's worked 100 times harder than Cody ever has, and that he's never been protected from an audience. And over these last few weeks, people have accused the WWE of protecting Cody Rhodes from John Cena, that John Cena was going to come out and completely bury Cody Rhodes, like he said earlier in the promo he was going to. And John Cena believes that Cody Rhodes was protected and shielded from certain audiences, from certain WWE superstars in his rise to the top. And that's part of the reason why he manipulated his way to the top of the business. Again, another really real and good complaint from John Cena against Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes had the final jab. He told John Cena that he's never had a crowd chant at him, "You can't wrestle." That one got John Cena riled up. He got back in the ring. They squared off. John Cena went for the sucker punch, and Cody Rhodes hit him with a crossroads and laid him out and stood tall over John Cena. Finally, a physical interaction after Elimination Chamber. They haven't touched each other. They haven't done anything to each other ever since then. And finally, we got some physicality 2 weeks out from WrestleMania. John Cena is no longer advertised for any WWE programming leading up to the big show. Will he show up in surprise? Will he be advertised going forward? Who knows? I have no idea. But in old wrestling, the guy who stands tall at the end of the final segment is not the guy who wins the match. So should that be their final segment before WrestleMania, Cody Rhodes stood tall, and therefore his title reign might be in jeopardy. Great start to the show. Phenomenal segment to open up. The New Day fought a returning New Catch Republic because Tyler Bate made his long-awaited return after several months away from action. They had themselves a good match, but it was New Day who, in the end, outsmarted New Catch Republic and won the match. And they demanded a tag title match against the War Raiders, to which the War Raiders came out and faced off with them. That's probably the WrestleMania title match. The New Day's heel run has definitely been underwhelming so far. But if they were holding out for WrestleMania, because they are one of the most decorated and loved and liked, well-respected tag teams of all time, the New Day, that is, if they just wanted to hold them out for a big WrestleMania tag title feud, that makes sense. But I feel like you could have done more in the intermediate to build them up as a proper heel threat, because they've kind of lost their heat over the last few months with the fan base, because they were booked just so messily and so terribly for these last few months that maybe there's not as much hype. But a New Day versus War Raiders feud for those tag titles at WrestleMania makes sense, because the Raw tag team division has been kind of weak over these past few months. They haven't been, the best. So the New Day is kind of the cream of the crop in that division, and they always have been. So to have them face for the tag team titles now as heel characters at WrestleMania makes a lot of sense. I feel like that'll end up being the match at WrestleMania. Gunther and Jimmy Uso had their weeks awaited match that they set up last week. And it was Gunther ultimately that defeated Jimmy Uso, just like everybody assumed. And he won by sleeper, which he's been doing a lot recently. But it was what happened towards the end of the match and after the match that really made that segment all that it was. Because he had Jimmy beat several times in the ring by pinfall. And he refused it. He lifted Jimmy's shoulders up to keep the match going because he wanted to send a message to main event Jay. And after he choked him out, he kept attacking Jimmy Uso. Jey Uso came out to make the save, but it was Gunther that laid out Jimmy. It was Gunther that laid out Jay, because if you recall, Gunther ran away, quote unquote, like he's been doing. But then when Jimmy was being helped out of the ring by Jay, Gunther came up from behind and he attacked both men. He zip-tied Jey Uso to the ring, brought Jimmy back in, hit him with the championship, was beating on him senseless, and Jay was having this really emotional, raw reaction in the corner to seeing his brother be beat up. He wasn't even calling him Jimmy. He was calling him John by his government name. And it made the segment all that more, touching and all that more empowering. And I feel like for a feud that's gotten so much flack over the last few weeks with Jey Uso and Gunther. It's been the same thing over again. Jey Uso has a match, he wins, Gunther attacks him after the match. Jey Uso has a match, he wins, Gunther attacks him after the match. Jey Uso has a match, he wins, Gunther attacks him after the match. It's been the same ongoing thing for the last few weeks, and it was kind of dead. That feud was kind of dead. But bringing Jimmy into it, just like they did with the Roman Reigns feud back in 2023, having Jimmy play a vital part in that feud in helping Jey get his confidence back, trying to fight Jey's battles, getting beat up, Jey seeing his brother get beat up to ignite that fire inside him that I got to do this for my brother. I got to do this for Jimmy. It was so well done. And it was so great. All the blood, all the emotion. That segment was great. 10 out of 10. And I feel that the Jey Uso and Gunther feud for WrestleMania has been revived. That feud has been revived 100%. They did a phenomenal job getting that feud, getting that train back on the tracks. The Judgment Day had a segment backstage where it seemed like they supposedly buried the hatchet, even though there was clearly still some tension. But the idea was that they buried the hatchet and Finn and Dominic Mysterio were going to go out there and show a dominant team of Penta and Braun, two of the most dominant superstars on Raw over the past few months. They were going to show them who's boss. Didn't really seem like they were going to. But fast forward to the match. Judgment Day, Finn and Dom actually picked up the win against Penta and Braun because Braun misfired a spear on Penta and it allowed Finn Balor to hit the coup de grace and pick up the 1-2-3, which, by the way, Finn Balor threw Penta out of the Royal Rumble. And Finn Balor also was the first to pin Penta in professional wrestling in the WWE. So big momentum for Finn Balor. He wants a WrestleMania Intercontinental Championship match, but there was Liv Morgan, the devil in Dom's ear, saying that he was saying it was him that won. He wasn't saying it was you that won or you guys. It was just him. And you deserve better than this. I feel that Finn, already had his crack at Braun and he lost. Dominic, it's you that deserves the match. You deserve that spot, not Finn. So that fatal four-way between Penta, Braun, Dominic, and Finn at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental Championship is still in play, and I believe it's still going to be the match that gets made. In other news, El Grande Americano, a.k.a. Chad Gable in a luchador mask, is back in action next week in Minneapolis. Penta and Braun had this little segment backstage where they were bickering over that missed spear. So they're obviously going to have problems going forward. They're probably going to face at WrestleMania, like I just said. Logan Paul had a segment with AJ Styles where they went back and forth. Logan Paul ended up laying out AJ Styles, and that match got made official for WrestleMania 41. Logan Paul versus AJ Styles, one-on-one at WrestleMania 41 in Vegas. Should be a fun match. Lyra Valkyria also had an interview segment where she announced that she and Bayley will be competing for the Intercontinental Championship next week because her loss at Bayley going into the Elimination Chamber is still eating alive at her. And because of what Bayley's done for her, she felt she deserved a tag title match. Like I said before, Finn Balor believes that he should be getting the title match because he won the match, yada, yada, yada. That fatal four-way, like I said, should be in play, and it should be the match at WrestleMania. And to close the show, we got this match where Bianca Belair was the special guest referee, and you had Rhea Ripley and Io Sky go at it for the Women's World Championship. And the match was closely contested. It was back and forth. But in the end, the match ended in a double disqualification, and Io Sky retained the Women's World Championship. And that resulted in Rhea Ripley, getting frustrated. She was frustrated during the match. She was frustrated after the match. She laid out both women and held up the title to close the show. Now, the only issue I have with Rhea Ripley's character is that she had this segment after she lost to Io Sky the first time where she reflected on her own, being in her own self, and she realized that she was the reason that she lost that championship, nobody else. She got in her own head. She got paranoid, and that's what cost her the championship. But on TV, that's not the case because Rhea Ripley's whole character is built on delusion and arrogance and anger that she always deserves this rematch, which she really doesn't. After she lost to Io Sky the first time, it was because she distracted herself with Bianca, not that Bianca did anything. This past time, she inadvertently kicked Bianca, which resulted in her not counting the 3 on time and allowed Io to recover. It's all been her own fault and her own doing, but she seems to have in her head that people are trying to screw her over. And this whole delusional Rhea Ripley character that's been being built up that she should just get whatever, whenever. It doesn't make sense. And she has no place in that women's world title match at WrestleMania. That being said, she's the most popular woman on the show. She's going to find her way into that match one way or another. NXT tonight, the only thing advertised, Shawn Spears and Ricky Saints were set up for an NXT North American Championship match. Everything else on the show is up for grabs. We don't really know what's coming about, but if you want to find out, tune in. CW later, 8 p.m. That's all I've got for you today, and wonderful day.